let's get right on up in it. Does the American African or Black American have a culture, and what is it? Well, let's get this clear first. What is culture? Is culture what you wear? Dancing around a fire? Your songs? That's more or less an expression of culture. That is not culture. Let's go on over to Encyclopedia Britannica and look at the definition of culture. Culture is a behavior particular to Homo sapiens together with material objects used as an integral part of this behavior. Thus, culture includes language, ideas, belief, customs, codes, institutions, tools, techniques, works of arts, rituals, and ceremonies, among other elements. So, culture isn't so much just what you wear, but basically, how does one interact with others, and how does one interact with the world? So before we get into that, let's ask, who and what are American Africans, Black Americans? We are a mixture of people who predominantly come from Africa. I know a lot of y'all don't want to hear that, but we predominantly come from Africa. Even still to the day, 400 years later, our DNA consists mainly around 80% African DNA and 20% other, being 20% other mainly European, Western European blood, and some Native American blood. One thing particular to African Americans is we consign mulattoes or biracial people to being fully black or fully African American, whereas in other places, South Africa, Africa, the Caribbean, mixed people, biracial mulattoes were considered other, not black, something else. But here, where one thing that was terrible but we benefited from was there was a majority of Europeans where we were the lesser as opposed to these other places, so we had the harshest treatment. So even if you were mixed race mulatto, you were pushed in, you were still in those fields picking cotton, you weren't accepted. It may have been a little bit better here and there, and it may have been a little bit worse if you were mixed biracial mulatto bloodline. So everyone included, even biracial, is still American African, and that's something we have to realize, that that's particular to us and not the same in other places. And another thing about us in America, the American African, we didn't have anywhere to run to, whereas in Africa and the Caribbean, there were a lot more places that you could run to. We really couldn't run anywhere. I mean, you could run from the south to the north, but it was still rough and terrible in the north. There were still black codes where blacks had to have all the lights turned off in their house around 8 o'clock. Sundown towns were mainly in the north, so if you go into a certain town after 6 p.m. when that sun goes down, you better get out of there because you're going to get killed for being a black person. So that's something particular to us that we have to realize. Our experience is a bit different from the other slave colonies and the other African nations who were colonized, and we have to realize that. But let's get into what exactly is African American culture, the fundamentals of it. And when I say culture, I mean the main tenets, not an expression like a genre of music or a clothing style. That's an expression of your culture. What I'm talking about is what particular elements do these people base their society on and their mindset on, of how they conduct themselves and how they interact with the rest of the world around them. So let's start at number one. And it's hard for us to believe because the culture has been changed drastically by outsiders, our enemies, but we'll get to that at the end of this. Number one, family. I know that doesn't sound correct now, but yes, this is true. One of the major aspects of American African society was family over everything. And that is a particularly African quality as well. But it was a bit of a difference here. We have not everywhere, but we have tales of people in Africa and even in the Caribbean selling their own family into slavery. Alexander Dumas's father, Thomas Dumas, the great French soldier, actually sold his family into slavery and went back for Alexander Dumas later because he saw how bright he was as a child. But the rest of his family, his own father, actually sold into slavery in the Caribbean for money when he was hurting for money. So that's something different. Whereas in African American culture, we would get married in slavery, even though our master had rights to our wives as well, and our masters had rights to the man as well. We still considered ourselves married. That's what the term broomstick marriage tends to, something that's not exactly 100% on the up and up, because what we used to do is we used to take a broom and jump over it, and then we were married. And what that comes from is we said to ourselves that everything that happened before is in the past, so we sweep it under the rug, and now we're married and we start anew. But one thing about us is after slavery ended, and our wives or children got sold off, we would go around the country hunting for them, looking, where is this person, where are they last seen. After one of us got freed, the man or the woman, they would work very hard and save up their money and then go back down to the South and buy their family members freedom. So that's where people are saying, African Americans were slaveholders. But what they don't say is that they each predominantly only had one slave. You can't do much with one slave. So what that was is we were actually buying our own family members back. Family was very, very important. We were actually had a higher marriage rate than anyone else in this country up until the 1950s, 1960s. Then it got turned around. That's another story. But family is one of the major things of African American culture. We're very tight-knit. In other societies like Japanese culture, I hear that you really don't interact with your cousins. It's mainly your main family. But with us, everyone's extended. Our cousins, our second cousins, we're all family, and it's still intertwined. So family was a very important thing to us. The next thing is spirituality, and again, this is predominantly African. Not saying that other people aren't very spiritual or don't have spiritual societies. Native Americans are very spiritual, but with us, it's very rare to see an atheist black person historically. Everyone grew up in the church historically. We are extremely religious people, and if you ever go to Africa, you'll realize once you meet them, they are extremely religious. Everything is about God. Everything. This is a sign. That is a sign. That's a demon. It's too much. It's too much. But our spirituality was one thing that kept us. We were always thought to be a pious and morally sound people. We were never to be swearing in public or, conducting ourselves the way we do now. That's something that's completely new. We were always thought of to be a morally sound people, and that's where I feel a lot of the jealousy and hatred comes for us. You see in the book Uncle Tom's Cabin, at the end, the slave gets beat to death, and he's still praying for his master's soul. That's a reality. We would get beat and then go pray for our masters who were evil to us. Extremely pious and morally sound people. But one thing that's particular to us and in the Caribbean parts of Africa, but historically, we were one of the first peoples to have this genre of voodoo and Christianity mixed together, more so Protestant Christianity. Whereas down in the Caribbean, it's a voodoo mixed with Catholicism. Catholics. So you see, Catholicism, a lot of Catholics, and it's mixed with a lot of voodoo principles. But with us, it's more Protestant. So, that trickled down throughout the Caribbean and back to Africa. You see, if you go into a white church, it's very, very quiet and solemn. When you go in the black church, it's well, you know what it is. And if you watch voodoo festivals and voodoo religion, spirituality, you see how we took voodoo and hid it inside Christianity. That screaming, people in the Christian church, they think, African voodoo, that's voodoo, that's the devils, but you're doing the same exact thing that they do. You scream, you jump around, you holler, you pass out, you catch the spirit, which is catching the energy. That's another story. And you pass out, you fall out. I've seen it all the time. Some of it was fake, and some of that was, I could see when it was real. I've seen some stuff going on in the church. I've seen a lot of bad, but I've seen some true Vadun spirituality wrapped inside Christianity. So that's another thing that's particular to us, the Vadun Christianity, Protestant Christianity mixed with Vadun. The third thing that we are, that is once again African, but I say it's particular to us for our own style. We are extremely musically profound, in our own way. All Africans are musically profound. Music is something else when it comes to black people. You know, that beat hits you. We're gonna sing, we're gonna dance. That's one thing when you go to Africa, you see it. The singing, the dancing, the kicking. No one dances like Africans. We can't get them there, but with us, the R&B, the soul, jazz. I mean, a lot of people in the world agree jazz is the greatest music genre ever invented. I say either that or soul. You know, hip hop's like 3 or 4. We have invented so many musical styles out of nothing over here. It's insane. And we would take our pain and make it beauty. You hear Sam Cooke in the song, the Chain Gang song. That's the sound of a man working on the chain gang. He's talking about black people being in prison. And he sings about it. It's the most beautiful song you've ever heard. Us singing about being in chains and incarcerated is the best thing ever. And a lot of the music that we turn our noses up, rock and roll, country music, that was originally created by black Americans. That was a representation of our culture, of taking the worst things, and everything comes from gospel. It's gospel, and then to the blues. The blues births jazz, country music, R&B, soul. Everything comes back from that gospel, from that hurt and that pain, singing out to God. We take that hurt and that pain and we make it the most beautiful thing ever. So we are extremely musically profound people, like most Africans, but our flavor is extremely different. And not to say that there wasn't a lot of Caribbeans involved in our music. That's very true. But when you come up here with us, it's something different that rubs off on you. And we'll get to that in the end. The fourth thing, and this is where it gets into us particularly as ourselves, where we differ from most Africans, not all Africans, but most Africans, some Caribbeans. Defense. We believe we have the God-given right to defend oneself. We believe we have the right to have guns. If they have guns, we have guns. If they have airplanes and missiles, we have airplanes and missiles. There's some African countries and Caribbean countries that don't even have an airplane, a military aircraft. They don't have an F-16, and they have the money to buy it, but they just steal the money and don't worry about that. They have their armies and whatever. I mean, some of them do have some serious armies. I'm not saying everyone, but some of them, they don't even have an airplane, a military jet fighter. People say the guns with us are too much. It wasn't a problem until the 70s to the 90s. We've always had guns. We had people coming in and burning our towns to the ground. We've been assaulted and brutalized and murdered over here for so long. We got to the point where we have enough, and that's where you see the early 1900s race riots. They thought they was going to be bad in them Chicago race riots. They was going to come and whoop our ass. And them white folks, they came up in there and they got that ass whooped. We ain't playing that shit. Nah, man. No. That's what we believe in Black American culture. You have the God-given right to defend yourself. You got a right to have an assault rifle in your house, to have firearms. They got it, we got it. You don't just sit there and let nobody beat on you and mistreat you and smack you around and then nothing happens. No, man. No. Why did God give the lion claws? Not only for hunting, but to defend himself. Why'd God give the antelope horns? To defend itself. We ain't just prey out here, man. You got the right to defend yourself, and we'll be damned. I agree, sometimes we do take it too far, but hey, we ain't playing it. And that's one thing where we differ from a lot of other black groups. They think we're too harsh or whatever, but no. We're packing heat. We're serious about it. Another thing else that is particular to African Americans, again, not all Africans, not all Caribbeans. Actually, with the Caribbeans, it might have came up first, but we have black pride. We have pride in this black skin, pride in coming from Africa. I've been in Africa and I've heard people say, "Don't call me black," and they jet black. Black is night, and they talking about, "Don't call me black." And I'm just like, what's wrong with you? Are you ashamed of it? They are ashamed of it. You never hear somebody don't call me white. You only hear them say, "Don't call me black." Okay, so within that black pride, the pride of being who we are, we take some aspects out of it. And within the black pride, sometimes it does go too far to get here, looking good. We don't like sitting around looking dirty, looking bummy, having dirty shoes. We don't believe in that. Some of it is an inferiority complex, but we've been through a lot as a people, so we have the right to look good. We got the right for our afros to look beautiful. We got the right to walk around with some jewelry on. Sometimes it's too much jewelry, but we got a right to look clean. As a black American from the early 1900s, we always look good. We look better than our former masters. We look good. We look good. Another thing under the black pride, historically, a little bit different now again, non-tribalism. So if you came up from the Caribbean, you came from Africa until recently, the last 30, 40 years, we considered you one of us automatically. We didn't really know or understand tribalism. Whereas there's a bit of tribalism down in those islands. Jamaicans don't like Haitians, Haitians don't like Jamaicans, etc., etc. And then in Africa, it's just absolutely crazy with the tribalism. People will be sitting around with white people treating them like dirt, Asians treating them like dirt, but they got a problem with the next tribe, the tribe across the river. And it's just like, what's wrong with y'all? You ain't got no black pride. You're ashamed to be black. So instead of attacking the real people who's running your country, who's mistreating y'all, you'll just attack another black person, another African, and it's just foolishness. So we haven't been hung up on tribalism historically. It's getting a little bit worse now, but from what I've seen in Africa, it's nowhere near that. Where somebody just says, "Hey, all the Zimbabweans got to get out of the country," but the white people don't got to get out of the country. It's like, what's wrong with y'all, man? What is wrong with y'all? You don't have black pride. If you had black pride, black people would come first. Of course, charity begins at home. I understand you and care about your tribe, but black people would come first, and then everybody else comes second. That's something that's particularly with us and a few of the other Caribbeans, the Jamaicans, the Haitians, a few others, that historically we didn't play that stuff. It was all black thing. It's falling apart now, all around the Western Hemisphere, but hopefully we can get back to that. The sixth thing that we have been known to do, the African Americans, mainly in the Harlem Renaissance, and the Caribbeans are into this too. Actually, the Caribbeans were some of the first who came up to us to be teachers. We are historians of Africa. We research African history because we want to know what happened, what went wrong. This is particular to us and the Caribbeans. It's very strange. I stayed in Africa for 2 years. The majority of Africans, not all, the majority of Africans do not know African history. Go to an African and say, outside of your country, don't Google it, outside of your country, name me 3 African kings or 3 African queens. Can you do it? The majority of them can. They can name their own kings and queens, but they can. They know their own history very well, but outside of it, if you asked a Nigerian about the war for the golden stool, they don't know. If you ask a Kenyan about Haile Selassie's war against the Italians or the Zulu fighting the British, they don't know anything about that. They don't even care. A lot of Africans look down on Africa like it was nothing, we never did anything. The Egyptians were Arabs. Kush was nothing. We don't even know about Kush. None of us ever built anything. We didn't even wear shoes before these white people came. They taught us everything. They don't even know. They don't even care about African history. Whereas to us, we were some of the innovators in African history. Not just us, because the greatest African historian of the last 50 years has been Sheikh Anta Diop and Theophilo Obenga. That's 1 and 2. And they're both Africans. So it's not everyone, but for the majority, they do not care about African history. It's changing, and some do, but it's not the norm. It's not the norm. And lastly, number 7, and this is about completely done as well, knowledge. We were people who searched for knowledge, and that's strange because you see African Americans now, most of them don't give a damn about going to college. They don't read. They're extra stupid. It's my people. I'll talk about them the way I want to talk about them. African Americans are extra stupid. I'm gonna say about at least 1/3, maybe even half, are extremely stupid. I mean, they got about a 10th, 11th grade competency level. They don't know a damn thing, and that's a shame because black men actually read at a lower reading level than the slaves who came out of slavery. When we came out of slavery, we turned around, we went from 70% illiteracy rate to only 30% illiteracy rate. We completely flipped it around, and right after slavery learned to read. That's because knowledge was illegal. One time, black Americans, even in slavery, we could have guns, but it was illegal for us to have books. Think about that for a second. It was legal for us to have guns, but illegal for us to have books, to learn how to read. Actually, I just read this the other day. Martin Delaney's mother, the great black American nationalist Martin Delaney, his mother actually had to run from, I believe, Virginia up to Pennsylvania because she was accused of teaching him, which was illegal. She was educating. How crazy is that? We had scientists. People don't know. Black Americans actually had their own car company, Patterson cars. Before a lot of European countries even made a car, we were creating cars. The real McCoy, one of the greatest scientists, his inventions were sought after by white people. And of course, Lewis Latimer. Thomas Edison didn't do a damn thing. He just came up with the money. But Thomas Edison's scientific team, including Tesla, had a black man on it, Lewis Latimer, and they were trying to get the light bulb to work, and it would blow out after a few minutes. So a light bulb that blows out after a few minutes, that's worthless. And it was Lewis Latimer who actually came up with the idea, the invention to use the filament, a different filament, a carbon filament, to keep the light on. If it wasn't for Lewis Latimer, we wouldn't have light bulbs for another 50 years possibly. So it was a black man who was responsible, part of the team, to invent the light bulbs. And that's completely hidden. It was a black woman who was a main mathematician in NASA to get to the moon. We didn't even learn that in high school. They keep that hidden from us. It was a black woman who got us to the moon, one of the main mathematicians in it. But nowadays, we've completely given up on knowledge. We don't want to go to college. If we go to college, it's for something stupid. You get a PhD in English, a PhD in literature. And I love English and literature, but that's useless. We don't need that now. We need people to go into STEM. We need engineers, architects, doctors, computer scientists. We need that. We don't need you to go to college for massage therapy, gender studies. I'm sorry. Let them do that. That's not for us. We need scientists to build for ourselves. That is our culture, learning. We have been some of the greatest scientists, black scientists in the black world. Us. We got to get back to that. And you see, we've let these people take our culture over. And that is the problem. I remember rap in the 80s and in the 90s. We've always had that gangster part of rap, but we also had that intelligentsia part of rap. We had The Wu-Tang Clan. People became scientists off of listening to the Wu-Tang Clan. We had cannabis. We had all these great rappers that make you think, but you look at them now and it's just degenerate behavior. It's because we let these people take us over. And then the usual suspects, you know who, they start pumping it full of stupidity. Every one of my black women, she's nothing but a whore. What? Even Little Kim, okay, she had that sex appeal, whatever. Madonna had that, Marilyn Monroe, but Little Kim had bars. She could rhyme. You're just you're terrible. You're just bye. I'll get into that. But that's our culture. Family, African spirituality, Badoon Christianity, our musically profound, not just one music, but all the music genres we created. Rock and roll, jazz, country, R&B, soul, hip hop, defense. We have the God-given right to defend ourselves. We're seeing as some of the most radical blacks on the earth, and I take that with a badge of honor. And other blacks, they look at us and say, hey, we need to copy them. That's a badge of honor to be looked at like that, and we got to get back to that. You should be training. I got to get into it myself. You should be training to defend yourself. Serious, man, because it might get bad over here. Our culture is black pride. We are proud of our black skin. We don't put bleach and cream on. Now and again, I don't care about a wig, but every one of y'all got a goddamn Barbie wig on. I'm tired of that shit. Tired of it. We gotta start saying, I need some cornrows. I need some micro braids. I need some afros. I seen a girl today, yo. She had a little fade with a line into it. I swear to God, it made her look so much better. We gotta have pride about being black people. About being black Africans. I ain't ashamed of being from Africa. I know how it happened, but look what we've done. Look how much we've changed the world. We got to get back to the historical research, real historical research. That's why I had to get on this YouTube thing. Let me stop complaining about it. Let me put my 2 cents in, because there's a lot of stupidity. People saying the slave trade ain't happened, nothing that happened. You could tell a black person from America, we came from the moon. Man, they'll start walking around with a goddamn cheese block on our head. These niggas are so dumb. We got to be historically accurate. We got to get back to it. We want to do debates with these people who are saying none of the Egyptians were black, none of the Moors were black. You never invented anything. You're never doing anything. Really, let's have a debate and let me bust your ass in front of everybody. But we got to get back to the historical research. And we got to start cracking these people in the heads who talk this stupidity stuff, that the slave trade is a lie and we've always been from America and none of this. Man, you just want master to love you. Shut up. And mainly, the main part of our culture, we got to get back to the knowledge of self and creating and building things. I mean, I'm in the tech sector, so when you get up in there, man, there's very few black people in there. Very, very few. We got to get back to that knowledge. Don't be scared because you walk into a classroom and there's a whole bunch of Asians in there. That means you're in the right place. Oh, I can't go be an architect or an engineer. It's too hard. Push yourself to the limit. Push yourself to the limit. Your ancestors was Lewis Latimer. Your ancestor was I forget, man. My brother who came up with all the things from the peanut. We have so many scientists. The real McCoy. We have so many scientists. Patterson vehicles. We have so many scientists. We got to get back to that. But let me get on some final thoughts here real quick. People want to talk about hip hop. Hip hop isn't even the best thing we've ever invented. And hip hop, comes from New York, and it is from Black Americans, Caribbean Americans, and a little bit of Latinos are in here. Hip hop consists of knowledge of self, who you are, where you're from, breaking, rhyming, beatboxing, DJing. That's the 5, and then I'll add on 2 more. Fight the power, which you need to be. You need to rap about something that's political, something else other than yourself. You just sitting there rapping about your gold chain or whatever. You gotta rap about the problems of society. You gotta fight the evil power. And spirituality, we ain't got into that. That's what hip hop is. But hip hop, one of the main parts of hip hop is rap. And rap comes from the South. Rap comes from bums getting drunk, talking shit around a table. like dolomite, if you know what dolomite is. So the bums from the south coming up from the south to the north, they used to get drunk in the alleyways and talking shit. I'm from Mississippi and I brought the piss with me. I dare one of y'all niggas to hit me. Well, I don't care if you're from Mississippi. My name is Jack, and I don't do nothing but spit the fact. We used to talk shit to poetry. That's old. And that came into up to the north, and that became into rap, talking shit. And then we put it over a beat. That's where it comes from. Country music, that comes from black people going out to the west, and the term is cowboy. Now, it wasn't just black Americans, it's actually Mexicans involved in cowboy culture too. But that's like lassoing cattle and stuff. That does come from Spain and then got brought over here. The Mexicans took that. But true cowboy culture is the way that they dress, their slang, and the music. The music comes predominantly from the banjo. The banjo was created from West African instruments and got brought over here, and we played the banjo during slavery, 1800s, and that got mixed in. The blues turns into country music. A lot of these people got taught by blacks how to make the music, and of course they took it. Rock and roll. Little Richard was one of the main teachers of rock and roll, one of the main creators, and we just completely left that stuff out. That's some of our music we got to get back to. But I mean, you see how our culture is now. It's a complete disaster. Our woman looks like well, you know how they make our woman look. What do we look like? We look like a criminal and a complete moron. They run around saying we have low IQs and stuff. Meanwhile, Africans, Nigerians are completely kicking the shit out of white Americans in colleges. They're some of, if not the best students, but black people have low IQs. We cannot let these people into our culture. They can't have any part of it. I understand you're broke and you want to have, but we can't let these major companies control what we think of and who we think of as the best rapper. Oh, she's the best rapper. Look at that. Who the hell is that? I've never seen that chick before in my life. I've never heard of her. She's never been a battle rhymer. We don't know who she is. I don't know nothing about her. She ain't on the underground. These whack ass flows, and then tell me that's the best rapper. We can't let these people tell us what we think of about sex, about how we interact with each other, about how we should be and what we should think. We got to get these people the hell out of our culture. But before that, we got to know our culture. So let me quote the great Marcus Garvey, a Caribbean who came up here and was brother in arms with us because that's what we want. My brother Marcus Garvey said, black people are cursed with petty differences. Got to start arguing about this stupid shit. And we got to get back to our culture. One. Let me just add on one more thing about culture. We are the most copied people on the planet. The majority of people don't walk around trying to look like Arabs or trying to look like these people or those people or those people or some other people. They walk around with their own culture. Let me say, when you want a job, you show up looking like a white man. When you want a girl, you show up looking like a black man. They used to be talked about so bad, they should talk about my black woman. Her lips are too big and her butt's too big. Now they run around sticking fat in their lips and then they bottom to look like her. They completely stole our R&B and sent it to Korea, and now they're copying us. And everybody walks around taking our rap music and wants to tell us we ain't got no culture. That's why we're saying the Egyptians are black. When you sit around talking about Egyptian trap music and this trap music and that rap, and to a degree I wouldn't care, because I do like seeing our flavor, our rap, our culture coming through in another flavor. But if you got animosity for the black anywhere on the earth, especially the black American, leave my culture the fuck alone. So don't you ever feel sad people talking shit about you ain't got a culture or you ain't this, you are that, because everyone copies us and everyone wants to be us. And as soon as we realize that, we're going to realize our destiny of who we are and what we're going to do and what God got planned for us. One.